Right, we've got 40 participants so far. We'll just give a couple of minutes for everyone to join in, and then
give Zoom a chance to catch up.
Adam, could I ask you to mute, if that's all right?
Yes.
Right, I think we'll make a start now. Right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining in. Welcome to the Christmas Lecture 2020 webinar, brought to you by IET, Mercy and Western Cheshire Local Network, including the Isle of Man. The webinar is organized by Young Professional Community Committee, YPCC, also known as Young Professionals Group. And before we start, I'd like to give you a friendly reminder to mute your microphone and disable your videos. And thank you for your cooperation. Now, the title of the webinar is A Journey into a Career in Aerospace Engineering. And today we're really glad, excited and honored to have Bianca Cefalo as a speaker for the webinar. And just a little bit about Bianca. She's a director at International Business Development at Carbase Corporation. She founded Cosmica Space Consulting Limited. She's a rocket scientist, a space educator, and a public speaker. And I will be your host. My name is Bibek Dorji. I'm a former Young Professionals Honorary Secretary and a final year mechanical engineering student at Liverpool John Moore. And with me, I've got co-host Adam Wilson. He's a Young Professional Social Media Coordinator, and he's a graduate engineer at Sellafield. Now, on to the program of the this evening's webinar. We've got introduction. I'll be giving a brief introduction with few slides, and on to the main bit. We've got presentation. Bianca will be presenting for around 40 minutes, and we've got exciting Q&A sessions. So for that, what I'd like to do is I'd like you to use the Q&A box rather than the chat box to ask and type any questions that you have for Bianca throughout the lectures. And my co-host Adam Wilson will be selecting your questions and asking later to Bianca at Q&A session. Now, finally, at the end, I've got closing statement. I've got some important information for you regarding continuing professional development certificates and what young professional groups will do regarding its future events and stuff like that. So I would like to give a little bit of background information about who we are as a young professional group. We are one of the group of Mercy and Western Cheshire Local Network. We've got education team, electronics and electronic systems group, energy and environment group, which recently ran a webinar regarding hydrogen fuel. It was only yesterday, so if you'd like to catch up with that and other webinars recently done, for example, manufacturing and management group, they recently run a biomedical engineering webinar, and it is recorded, and you can find that in our YouTube channel, which I'll go more into it later at the end of the webinar. And highlighted on the orange here, we've got Young Professionals group. So that's us, and of course we've got main committee. So these are all the groups that comprises the Mercy and Western Cheshire Local Network. And regarding the activities that we do across all our groups in local network, it ranges from lectures and seminars including webinars like these. And there's workshops as well, there's recognition events, group meetings, and there's annual dinners and the newsletters as well, where we include our plans for future events. And we've got PDF version of the newsletter available as well. So for that, I'll also go a little bit more into it later at the end of the session of how you can get your hands into it. And unfortunately, due to pandemic, we have not been able to organize the face-to-face session. But going further into 2021, we do hope to organize webinars like these and face-to-face events and technical visits and all these exciting events. So I'm sure listening to all that, you must be thinking, how can I get involved and how can I be part of this? So in that case, I've got brilliant news for you. You can join a group, you can come to seminars, webinars like these, and you can perhaps even involve your organization, which would be great. And for that, I've got really important contacts at the bottom of the page here. You can contact Rob McDonald, who is a local network chair, and you can contact Alex Hedspeth, who is a Young Professionals Group Honorary Secretary, using his email. And without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Bianca Cefalo, but before that, I would like to just give a little more background information about her. As I mentioned earlier, she's a director at International Business Development at Carbis Corporation. She founded Cosmica Space Consulting Limited. She's a rocket scientist, space educator, and public speaker. And in Young Professionals Group, the events that we organize, we're always looking for someone to encourage young professionals like myself and many others who are attending universities, who are into their early career, to be motivated in their career and do well, and let them know about the challenges that they might have to face. And in this, with that being said, we're honored to have Bianca in this webinar, who is a role model for that. And about her, she's spent nearly a decade between Berlin and London, driving the space thermal products development and contribution to the delivery of multiple commercial science missions, including NASA JPL Inside Mars mission. And she's also a very active STEM ambassador. She's a space communicator and educational consultant, youth mentor, and public speaker. And she's done many public speaking and lectures, and I've been very lucky to attend a few of them in the past. Now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Bianca Cefalo. Bianca, welcome to the webinar.
Hi, Vivek. Hi, everybody. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. And thank you very much for all the people that have joined tonight. It's the 26th of November. It's nearly the end of this crazy 2020, and the attendance today to this webinar, you are still going, guys. So I'm really grateful for all of you being here. Actually, today, which is the 26th of November, again, is the Thanksgiving Day. So now you may or may not be celebrating this kind of event. Maybe you know people or you have friends who are celebrating the Thanksgiving. And today, now, irrespective of who is celebrating what, I think that all of us as humanity should pause for a moment and be grateful to each and every one of us making it this far into this year. So I just want to start saying thanks to all of you who made it this far, who are still here, who are still going and having the time, taking time out of your day, however is your day going, whatever you may be doing, however is your lockdown, you are here. So that's really one of the first stepping stones you have to hold on. And on those days where you will feel down, when you will feel like there is a crisis happening, because there will be crisis happening in your career and in your personal life. not only on a larger scale, but on a smaller scale, we all have crises and we've all gone through crisis. And on those days, just remember that on the 2020, at the end of that year, you were still here listening to somebody who for you is a stranger, who is telling you a story, and you are here for a motivation. Remember that motivation next time that you have to do something and you don't feel like doing it and you feel like that everything is against you. Remember that motivation. That is the motivation that will keep you going. And that is the motivation that actually kept me going my entire life, since I actually started wandering into the engineering field, let's say. So I'm not showing slides again, because I think you've seen them all. You've seen all the slides of the world. You've seen any kind of formulas. You've just gone crazy on any kind of online lectures and online webinars. So I will just be telling you a story. And hopefully at the end of that story, you will be able to understand that all the kind of limitations that the system or the establishment is trying to make you feel or hear or impose to you, they actually don't exist, because the only limitations we have are in our minds. It's not our past, it's not where we're meant to go, it's what we think now, what we think today of who we can be in the future and how we can contribute to the major value of our life, of our close ones, and the humanity as a whole. Talking about the journey through aerospace engineering, that was very accidental to me. So today I have the honor to share this with you, and I have also the honor of being one of possibly one of the few women and one of the youngest women to be on a board of directors of a company, and to have been one of the few women to be again the youngest woman, also non-British, to be in a boardroom at Airbus Defence and Space 3 years ago. This is something that nobody thought it was possible. And this is something that I didn't even think I would end up doing when I was a child. Me becoming a rocket scientist was very accidental because, as you may probably understand from my accent, I am Italian. I was born in Naples, in the south of Italy. And I was born in a very humble, let's say, I would say not humble, I would say very unprivileged situation. My parents, they had a business which went bankrupt when I was a child. So I spent most of my childhood and most of my teenagerhood being very poor, being very in a situation that was very disadvantaged to any other person out there. But not only that, I was in a situation when, because the business of my dad failed and it was quite known in the industry at the time, we were looked at by any kind of member of the closest family, to the ex-co-workers, to the community, to the city. We were looked at like the children of a failure. So we were looked at like, me and my brother, who is younger than me, we were looked and kind of not even given credit for what we could do in the future, because people thought, well, you know, you've had these examples from your parents. What are you meant to do? Now you have no money. Now you are coming out of a failure. You are not going anywhere. Nobody knows you. You don't have the means to go through educations. Your parents didn't have an higher education. They are not even engineers. They are nobody. So you are going to be nobody. This is what I was dealing with when I was very, very small. I was 7 years old when all of this happened. However, I knew what was going on in my family. And I knew the passion that my dad especially had for his business, which at the end we founded again 4 years ago. He has always been working with cars. with any kind of cars. He was not a mechanic, but I used to call him a wizard of the automotive. He could mount and dismantle any kind of cars, from Ferraris to Lamborghinis to Porsche to a Fiat to any kind of things. And he would know exactly what pieces were meant to be together, how everything was constructed. He didn't have an education, higher education, sure, but he knew what he was doing. And it was having fun, irrespective of how the things were going or how the financial situation was really, really difficult. He was having fun with what he was doing, and he was trying to recover from the situation as well, with us and for us. So since I was a child, and I remember spending time with him in his garage, I just fell in love with how he loved what he was doing. And I thought, when I grow up, irrespective of what people say, I want to keep doing something that makes me joyful every day. And secondly, I was so impressed by how you see one of those beautiful masterpieces of engineering, like a Ferrari, and then you see how it actually is mounted together, is assembled together, all the tiny little pieces that contribute to the beauty and to the masterpiece that piece is. So I started to be very, very interested into how all of that was working. And I thought, well, you know, what I can learn from this is that I surely don't want to be spending my entire life into this garage. I want to do something else, but I want to do something that is related to cars, to automotive, to engineering. And the more I was going on, the more also what contributed to this was our usual Sunday lunch ritual, let's say. So as Italians, irrespective of how much money you have or not, there is always food on the table. And the Sunday lunch was a ritual for all of us, for the family. And it was also the timing where there was Formula One. Formula One for me became, all the Formula One pilots for me became my heroes, became my best friends. I loved seeing that. I loved watching that with my family. And the more I was looking into that, the more I was, okay, this is what I have to do. This is something that really is hitting me in the core. And again, I couldn't really understand how I could possibly do that. Again, I was just a child. So it's one of those dreams. However, during one of those days, because my dad saw me so very interested into this kind of things, he said, well, you know, if you love cars and Formula One so much, why don't you become an engineer? And that sentence, it was so simple for me, yet so powerful. Because first of all, it was my dad saying to his daughter that she could do whatever she wanted and she could be an engineer. Although they weren't engineers, although we didn't have money, but especially I was a woman and I was her first child. And being a woman in the south of Italy, especially when I was born more than 30 years ago, was still seen like, well, you know, you just marry somebody and you become a housewife. That sentence was extremely powerful to me. He said, you can become an engineer. So I started looking into engineering, and I was also very, very fascinated by what my mom was doing on the other side. She's always been a makeup artist, and she's always been the creative side of the family. Arts and crafts and everything that has to do with the beauty of life. So one day I managed to see a documentary about aerodynamics of Formula One, how you simulate them, how you do computational fluid dynamics, how you test cars into wind tunnels. And the more I was watching that, the more I understood how basically studying aerodynamics and fluid dynamics, you can give a body a color, a pattern to air, to anything that is around our bodies today that we take for granted. You can basically turn it into colorful pattern, into a rainbow pattern. And that rainbow pattern is not only beautiful and very, very artistic as you see it, but it's telling you something that is velocity and temperature of your car, so that you can basically fine-tune the performance of that car. So I thought, okay, this is it. This is how I can merge the technological edge of the cars with the beauty of what I see from my mom, with this artistic side, this curiosity that I had for understanding Picasso, because for some reason my mom had a poster of Picasso out of our bathroom, and anytime I was going to the bathroom, then I was getting out, I was like 5 years old, and I remember seeing these weird things. I have no idea what this is, but I'm very fascinated by these colors. So I thought, well, I could probably be Picasso Formula One. So I'm going to become an engineer. But once again, I had no idea what could get me into being an expert of aerodynamics. So what I did, I just went up to the, very, very easy, went out to the website of my university in Naples, Federico II, and I realized that to be an expert of aerodynamics, at least at the time, I should have become an aerospace engineer. So I said, I was a teenager at the time, and I did my research. I went back to my parents. I sat them down and I said, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to become an aerospace engineer. And they looked at me. They were silent for a while. And then they said, well, you know, we haven't had the chance to do what we wanted because we couldn't. We had to work since we were very young. So if this is what you want, they said, we understand absolutely nothing of what aerospace engineering is, but if this is what you want, you shall do it. So, and this happened. Although there was a lot of resistance again. There was a lot of resistance from my community. There was a lot of unnecessary and unrequired opinions from your neighbors, from my ex-partner, from my ex-partner's family, because of everything, because I was a woman, because no one in my family was an engineer, because I wasn't very privileged financially, because I was coming from a very small town, because I had to learn another language, and no one in my family had ever really traveled outside Italy, because of many things that they thought I needed to hear from them. Although none of them had actually done anything so powerful and inspiring to tell me what to do with my life. So my journey into aerospace engineering became a provocation because I had to make it happen for myself, first of all, because I think I loved what I wanted to do since the very beginning without even knowing where I was going. I had to do it for my family, but also I had to do it for the many women, boys, transsexuals, binary people, non-binary people, anyone out there who has been told they can't do something because of 1, 2, 3, whatever, 100 reasons that society is telling them. I had to do it for all of them. Because if I'm telling you this story today, it's because I actually made it against any kind of odds. So I started studying aerospace engineering, and it was amazing. Also, we kind of started having again back financially from my family, to the point where in 2008 there was a big crash of the market in the States, and that had an effect on the business of my parents as well, which meant one day my dad came home and he was crying, and I never seen my dad crying, not even when he's lost his siblings or his mom. He was crying because he sat at the table and he told me that he couldn't have paid for my education anymore because we were also possibly going to lose our house. We had lost everything that we had, and he couldn't give me what he promised I could have. So basically he sat at the table and said, well, you know, well, everything that people were saying was true. We are not going to get out of our situation. It was a very hard moment, but also it was a moment of huge crisis where myself and my mom had to really understand what to do and had to gather any kind of creative ideas that we could do. So in that situation where I was studying, everything was going well. I was crushing it at university, and then I couldn't really pay for it. I had to find a job. So now I had to find a job, and I had to I didn't have resources, so I had to become resourceful. Becoming resourceful for me was leveraging anything that I was doing that was different from anybody else in the community. So I understood that I didn't have a car. Obviously, I didn't have a car, and I couldn't go anywhere. So I couldn't really get a job at a supermarket or at a bar or at whatever. I couldn't do that because everything was far away, and I couldn't just drive there. Nobody, we didn't have anything. So the only thing that I thought I could do, I was doing very well, was I knew mathematics, I knew physics, and I knew English, because of course I started studying English on my own, and no one around me knew that. And also there were lots of moms that were working full time, and they had children or young kids, or the younger ones that were going to university, that needed support with their homework, with their exams. So I started telling my mom, I said, well, mom, you know all of these people, and you know that I'm the only one here in this community at the end of the day who's doing aerospace engineering. So I could give this service and get paid for it. So I became a private teacher for mathematics, physics, English, and any other things that really mums and dads couldn't follow and couldn't understand. And actually that business for me was really good, because I was able to pay my education. I was even able to go on travels. So in the crisis, I managed to leverage my, let's say, unique selling points, which was my talent, which was exactly being an aerospace engineering student. And I used that to attract clients. And this was basically my very first business, let's say, that helped me going through my education and even enjoying life a little bit. So I was going to uni in the morning, I was working in the afternoon, I was studying at night. And some of those days were so hard, where we didn't even have electricity at home. So at night I was studying with candles, which made me feel pretty much like Leonardo da Vinci. So it was very vintage, very retro. But that was a moment, this is where we realize, oh my God, how am I going to make it? But fast forward 5 years. So 2008, that was the crisis where I had to become resourceful. 2013, I was packing up my bags. I was moving to Berlin, and I was working for my very first project. That was the NASA JPL InSight Mars mission. So those 5 years later, I could actually tell myself, well done you, that you didn't stop. Because if you had stopped before, and if you had quit before during those times, you wouldn't have never had the chance to being 23 and working on a NASA JPL Martian mission, which is now on Mars. Actually, today is 2 years that is drilling the soil. That instrument that I worked on with plenty of amazing people around the world is 2 years that is still operating on the Martian mission. In 2018, it landed on the 26th of November, exactly this moment. And when I saw that landing, I cried, because it made me realize how much I could have missed out if I had just listened to people, and if I had just quit when everything was just going downhill. So one thing that you can understand from possibly what I'm saying is that no matter where you are now, if you have that drive, and if you can become resourceful with what you have, because all of you have a story, all of you have a unique point that can make you stand out in a way or another, you have to keep going, because you could be the next one working on a NASA mission. You could be the next one working on the next SpaceX Crew Dragon space flight. You could be the next one who is just opening a startup that is doing something that nobody has done before. You could be that person. And just don't think that this crisis we are all living today is something that is going to stop that journey. If anything, you are becoming more resilient, you are becoming more resistant, and you are understanding in this isolation of the entire humanity, this cocoon of humanity, what kind of butterfly you want to be in the future, if you want to be into space, if you want to be into automotive, if you want to be into humanities, if you just want to drop everything and go traveling and becoming a travel blogger. Whatever makes you happy, you are understanding what's your motivation today. So that happened in 2013. That was my first project when I went to Berlin. And I was also hired for that specific project because, again, I was leveraging some very unique skills that I was developing during my education because I loved fluid dynamics. And when I started working on studying aerospace engineering and then aerodynamics, I realized that that kind of work, that kind of talents could have been applied not only to cars, but obviously to aircrafts and to re-entry capsules. So I moved on to hypersonic aerodynamics, onto studying space systems, radars, telecommunications, everything that had to do more with the space. So that's why I'm saying it was all accidental. I wanted to become a Formula One race engineer. And then I moved on to the space because I realized that could have been applied into the outer space, which for me was, wow, if I can go there, then I'm not going to come back to Earth anymore. And because I was studying on my own again, there weren't many really classes during my education on softwares, on computational fluid dynamics. There wasn't much going on at the time. It was still very niche. So I had to study on my own. I had to use my own resources to study something that I loved, but I couldn't study at university. And that, again, was my unique selling point. Because when they hired me, and I was still a student, 23 years old, when they hired me, it's because they wanted someone that was expert in aerothermal fluid dynamics. And nobody in Europe was that kind of expert, because clearly there wasn't a class in any kind of education doing that for young people. So again, if you have anything that you like and you go the extra mile to study that thing, to read about it, to go for webinars, to go for classes that are out of your academia, that are out of what you do on a daily basis, that will pay off, because you will always be ahead of anybody else that is just doing what is meant to do. After that project, then when everything was delivered from NASA, and then we waited until 2018 for the landing, I had to move from my previous position to another position that was thermal engineering, because clearly in space, there is no air. So there is air whilst you were leaving the Earth and then you were coming back. But in the vacuum of the universe, there is no air. So there was no fluid dynamics I could apply. But I could become a thermal engineer, because the thermal protection of systems in space is extremely critical, especially if you think about satellites, from CubeSats to big telecommunication satellites that are orbiting around the Earth. In the moment they are transitioning from the eclipse to the sunlight, there is a change of temperature that goes from minus 150 to plus 150 degrees Celsius. And everything that is inside that spacecraft, batteries, payloads, cameras, any kind of instruments, they have to stay within a very tiny range of operating temperatures. For example, batteries have to stay in between minus 30 plus 25 plus 30. And if you think that outside there is minus 150. So I moved on to thermal engineering. That was extremely exciting for me. So what I was doing, I was spending days coding, simulating all these kind of thermal conditions that any kind of payloads, electronic box, CubeSats, small sats, big telecommunication satellites were going to see in the outer space. And there were projects commissioned by the European Space Agency, from the German Space Agency, because I spent these 5 years in Germany, in Berlin, from any kind of bigger agencies out there. And I was simulating these conditions. I was recreating them into a testing campaign with my team. I was testing dummies before they actually went onto space or were implemented onto the flight hardware. Then once everything was implemented on the hardware and everything was ready to fly, I remember one of the CubeSats I've worked on, I was also checking the downlink data from that CubeSat, from the temperature sensors that were coming from the CubeSat to my laptop, and I was checking that everything was within the temperatures that we needed to have. So it was even real live communication with a CubeSat, which made me think how much we can do and how much we can contribute as humans to the fact that you are communicating with something you sent out there, and that thing is communicating with you. So doing all of this made me think how much we can do, how much bigger we can be, how much bigger than ourselves and then our limitations in our heads we can be. If you think about telecommunication spacecraft, again, Wi-Fi couldn't be possible without them. We wouldn't be here. Nobody could have lived through a pandemic in the way we are living today without space technologies, without space advancement, without constellations that are in LEO orbits or geostationary orbits. None of that could have been possible without space technologies and the implementation of all the other methods together. So another thing is that most of what we do as engineers, we take it for granted because we studied, we are working on it, we do projects for it, then we send them out, they are delivered. But then we don't realize how much the advancement in technology that we are contributing to is contributing to the evolution of humanity. If you think about our smartphone now that have basically any kind of computing capacity that the entire world had during the 79 when there was the first mission to the moon. That mission to the moon had a tiny fraction of the power that this smartphone has. So imagine how much all of us, with all the different skills and all the different talents we have as engineers, how much we're contributing to making ourselves better and bigger than what we thought we are. After those 5 years where I spent from fluid dynamics to thermal engineering, and I really worked on so many projects, met so many people from all over the world, I also realized that I was more of a people person. So as much as I loved coding and I loved being a testing engineer, but I was more on an entrepreneurial kind of path, more of a management path, leadership path. And so it was in 2018 that I actually moved from Berlin to London, where I live now. And it's been now 3 years that I live, more than 3 years, that I live here. And when I made this switch, it was for Airbus Defence and Space, where I was one of the, as I was saying before, one of the youngest product managers, only woman, under 30, to sit in a boardroom with all the other product managers across the boards and feeling like, where are all the others? This is what I felt. That experience at Airbus Defence and Space was amazing. It was amazing because, once again, I realized that, first of all, I had applied for a job where I didn't think I had 100%, let's say, all the different skills that were required on the job description. So another little lesson: if you think you are not fit 100% with the job description, do it anyway, because worst case scenario, you land the job. And another thing is that most of the job descriptions, especially when you are younger, or even if you are more senior, as now I've become, most of them are just what they are, descriptions. They are just what people, hiring managers, think they want. But then if you don't apply and if you don't meet that person in person, if you don't have an interview, you actually don't realize what is needed out of that job descriptions or not. And this is especially for women. There is it's you know, data say that 80%, well, most of women apply to a job if they actually think they are ready at least 80% for that role, especially a senior role or a management role, leadership role, 80% ready for the job descriptions. That's BS. Even if you feel like you were just 50%, 20% ready, you have to go for it. I didn't feel ready for my job, and I became the youngest product manager and probably one of the most known at Airbus Defence and Space, because then I joined also a cross-board group where I was the leader of the entire thermal management production for telecommunication spacecraft against people that have been there for the past 30 years. So your drive, your motivation, and your passion, and obviously your talent, will make you go places that you didn't think you can be just because you are limiting yourself to a piece of paper. Don't do it. So this is what happened. And I spent the past 3 years at Airbus Defence and Space. And I was working on telecommunication spacecraft side of things, on innovation, especially disruptive innovation. Now, when we talk about disruptive innovation, if you think about any corporate culture, they can be very daunting because they existed for decades and they have never changed. So it is true that just 5% of women are in the boardrooms, especially into aerospace engineering or the space industry anyway. Minorities are still very underrepresented culturally and, let's say, sexually oriented, any kind of minorities, they are still very unrepresented into the boardrooms again, but also into the engineering teams. So this is all true. And this means that this corporate culture, it is very daunting, especially for people like me, like anybody who feels like they don't really fit into a category of an engineer or a rocket scientist. When I tell people I'm a rocket scientist, they laugh at me because they think I'm a fashion designer or whatever they think I am. So many people don't feel like they could fit into corporate culture and being at a very high level of seniority. That's why they hired me for this disruption that was not only from an innovation point of view, because I had worked on multiple missions that were from telecommunications, from Earth observation to interplanetary missions. So I had seen the entire spectrum of the technology in a very, very short time, but also because I was bringing in something that was different, a different level of communications. The very good thing that happened is that I just loved speaking with everybody. When I went there, all the different teams were merged into silos. People wouldn't even talk to each other or with the other person next to them or with the teams that were in the UK or dislocated in Germany and France. And I just started talking with anybody, irrespective of what was, their rank into this corporate ladder. And that helped a lot of other people feeling comfortable doing the same thing. Also comfortable speaking up to their managers when something was wrong, comfortable expressing their opinions when they thought that the other person wasn't really saying something correct. So I love to say that the innovation I brought into the aerospace and defense and space at Airbus and Stevenage was not only technological. It was obviously technological. Most of my ideas were awarded different budgets and innovation merits at Airbus Defence and Space, but it's not it. It's the way we all approach a problem. And the problem in our industry, especially the aerospace, is particularly cultural and behavioral. So this is where we have to approach things in a different way and solve those pending problems that have been there for so many years. And even if you don't solve the problem, but you shake things up, just by the way you are and by the way you communicate, you've made a change. You've created now a domino effect, and people will start to look at that like, that person came here, shook things up, now things are all different. And this means that I can do the same, either here or somewhere else. During these 3 years, of course, the pandemic happened at the very beginning of this year, where I was already thinking of doing something else, because again, I thought I had done what I was meant to do in those in that spectrum of time. So I again, during the very first lockdown, I needed to go back to Italy. I wanted to stay there with my family. I spent there like 4 or 5 months. That time with my family alone, especially in isolation, made me think about the impact I wanted to have from a technological and social point of view, after having all this experience from when I was a child. So of course, I was a STEM ambassador already, and I was going to schools, especially the girls' schools in London, in North London, where I really realized how much it was important for them to see somebody they could relate to. A person, a woman, a girl that they could think, oh, I could look like her, and I could also do things that she's done. How important this is, as just to give them that another idea of what they could do without really leaving out the femininity of it, the character, the social life, the everything that people think we are meant to repress when we become engineers, because of the 9 to 5, because of the rules, because of the limitations. So it was so important for them to see that somebody could look like them, could wear hoops and red lipsticks and talk about rocket science. So during my time in isolation, I started doing more and more of these, to the point where I realized that I needed to set up a company for being a consultant. And this is what I did. This is what I did in July. So slowly from that point where, again, in 2008, I was struggling with my finances and with my electricity at home, to the point where, again, in less than 10 years, I own my own company. I've started again my family business, which is now led by my brother. Everything is going great. I changed multiple jobs. I landed also a director position for Carbise Corporation, which is a tech startup based in Atlanta. So I'm now the operations lead of business development in London for them in Atlanta. So it's like a 24/7 work for me, being always on a different time zones, having clients from everywhere in the world, and again, being one of the few women, because I'm the only woman who is the director there. And also now working on my own startup, by the way, because this also happened during the pandemic. And I joined, now I have 2 co-founders, and we are still in a ninja mode, but my startup will be possibly public in 1 year time, because now it's not really the time yet to become public. And also the idea of exposing more of my story, more of my vulnerabilities, has led me to get into people's life and have people coming into my life, which I didn't think they could. And they made my life extremely beautiful, way better than I thought it could be. And also having mentees now and coaching young girls, but also boys who relate to me, has been something that, again, in this crisis, because I had learned from my crisis when I was 4 and I had to find resources. Again, now this crisis made me understand that what is really needed these days is vulnerability. We all need to be more vulnerable, irrespective of what we do, irrespective of what we want to be. We have to be more approachable, because the more we share our stories, the more people relate to us, and the more we can help them and help ourselves understanding also if what we are doing is making a change. So I want to close today saying, first of all, thank you again for listening to my story. And again, I hope that after this stranger story that you've listened today, you may go and think about your days, this crisis, what you want to do, and think that everything that you put your heart and soul into is going to happen no matter what, if it's what you want. Because if it's not what you want, then you have to shift your radar and think, it's not happening, not because I can't, it's because it's not what I want. This is the question that you have to ask yourself. Is it this what you want? And if the answer is yes, you will make it happen, no matter what people say, where you are, how much money you have, how you look, how you speak, what's your accent. It doesn't matter. You will make it happen, because if I made it happen so far in space, anybody can do anything. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Bianca. That was very insightful. I'm sure everyone here really enjoyed it as well. At the moment, we've only got 2 questions. So if you want to ask any questions, now's your time, because after this, you might not get an opportunity. Both of them are anonymous. So the first question is, what advice would you give to a female engineering student trying to figure out what direction she wants to take her career in?
As I was saying before, it's you have to understand what you really like doing. And this requires a lot of thinking, because you may be doing, I don't know, electronics engineer and thinking, actually, I want to work into space, for example. So you have to understand, first of all, what you like doing. But another thing that I would say is, nowadays it's so very easy to be present on the socials. So the first thing is that approach people like me and many other people like me who are on the socials, who are on LinkedIn or Instagram. Follow them, get a mentor, being mentored by somebody who has done what you want to do. Or maybe you look at somebody and say, I want to do exactly that. I'm going to ask them how they did it. This is what you can do, and this can all be for free. You don't have to pay for it. So this is what I suggest. Follow the people that you think you may want to have a similar career. Ask them how they did it. Ask if they can be a mentor of yours. Some of them can't because of timing. And if they can, they will guide you into what you want to do.
Okay, so I hope that answered that question. Next one is, hi, I'm 15, doing my GCSEs and potentially interested in space engineering. Is there any work experience that I can take on that will help me on this path?
So what I always say is that besides the usual things that they say, okay, study mathematics and physics, I always used to say, again, the socials, now everybody's on the socials, so exactly, you were doing already things right. You're here, you're watching a webinar, reading a lot about space, being part of space communities. There are plenty on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Again, there is a massive community of space people where they are sharing everything every day. And you can already learn what kind of path into space you want to take, because it's not all about rocket science, it's about many other things. But another thing that I would suggest, and this is what I did, is that being part of space is not all about mathematics and physics, but it's also about being curious about things. And this is where my art background, in a way, came in. That's why I always say I probably started to think I wanted to become an engineer because I loved art and philosophy. Because for space, and there is plenty of things that you can do for space at the moment, you have to look at solving problems in a different way. And for doing that, you have to get out of the usual ways of thinking, especially if you want to be part of the innovation. So working on your curiosity, on different ways of looking at things, and joining communities nowadays on Instagram, Facebook, all of them, where you can connect with very young people interested in the space. That could be really the first thing that could propel you into that connection with somebody. That could be your breakthrough in the future.
Yeah, perfect. You spoke a lot about motivation. What motivates you nowadays?
What motivates me in these very crazy days is that I know that what I do as a space engineer and someone who is contributing to space, will move the entire humanity in a different direction. As I was saying before, life as we know it today wasn't the same when I was born, wasn't the same for my parents. If we didn't have engineers, and of course I'm talking now from the aerospace side of things, that could make this communication happen, we wouldn't be here, we couldn't connect, we would be completely on our own. So what motivates me every day is that if this happens, and I could be part of this in a way because I was on the telecommunication platforms, then I want to wake up every morning knowing that what I'm sending into space is changing our life and is making our life better and is evolving humanity in a way that we have never seen before.
All the questions are starting to filter in now. Yeah, so we've got 8 left.
Let's go.
For now. What are your tips into entering the aerospace engineering field? It's notoriously hard, and are there any routes after university?
So there are many actually. So one thing that and this could be very good for you, because I had an event, a workshop with my collaborators at EVONA. So EVONA is a Bristol-based space talent acquisition, and I've done a free workshop, and we created a free booklet that is exactly answering all these questions. Afterwards, I can leave you the link and everything where you can get the booklet, where you can see how you can write your CV, how you can send out all the links to any kind of placements, internships, or whatever other things that you can apply both in the UK or in the States or in Europe. So it's, at the beginning, it seems very daunting, of course, but I can leave this to all of you so that we've done this research for you, and it's for free, and I love to share it with anybody who actually feels they need this information.
Hello, how do you think you can become an entrepreneur in space engineering?
Oh, there are many ways. There are many ways. And actually, now is the time to become an entrepreneur into space technology, because in the next couple of decades, we don't just need spacecraft orbiting around the Earth or interplanetary missions. We need interplanetary habitats. We need more spaces. We need space tourism. We need any kind of things that you can possibly think we have now on Earth. In the next 100 years, we will need that into space. So how to become a space entrepreneur? There are lots of startup competitions that are happening for students, for engineering students, wherever they are coming from, their background. And they're all very public on LinkedIn or Facebook. So that's the one thing. Joining one of these startup competition and understanding how we could work with a team, with a group of people to get an idea out off the ground. And there are many things that you can do. There are many fundings available as well in the UK now, because again, for the political and economical situation, UK is pouring loads of money into space. So this is the best time and the best place to become a space tech entrepreneur. Finding your team, though, is the most important thing to do. So I would say joining one of the startup competitions, even though you don't really have an idea already, or maybe you have some ideas and you just want to share them out. Most of my mentees are starting to have their own ideas funded as space tech entrepreneurs, although they weren't coming from space. And all of these happen just because of community wise. So if you want to become an entrepreneur in space, this is the time, this is the place. Just don't be afraid of going out there, finding your team and say, I have an idea, I want to make it happen. Just do it.
And this is in terms of applying for a job. So what is the best way to stand out when applying for a job or for an interview in the space system engineering field?
One thing that we used to say to everybody, anything you've done in your life counts. And when both myself and many other people overseas are watching it to see this, especially when you want to become a system engineer, which means more of a leadership position, you need to have those management skills. So we would prefer people that, besides the academic background and their degrees, they would have worked in different things. Like they would have worked as waiters at the restaurant. They would have done something else. They were working in a shop, anything that they were doing, because that means those people, again, went the extra mile to make themselves out there. And in that way, we also understand that even if if you haven't done any work besides studying, and if you have any experience you've done, a paper you've written, a book you've read, anything that makes you the person you are, write it down. Write down your hobbies. Write down anything that makes you unique. Because what you need as a system engineer is knowing a bit of everything. And you have to be a people person, because you will have to deal with so many things, cross-functional leadership. And being a person who has done that already, maybe in the past somewhere, will definitely make you stand out with respect to somebody who's just gone to uni and hasn't really done volunteering, for example. All of this, you write it down, all the webinars, all the volunteering experiences, anything will make you stand out.
I just lost the Q&A. Right, so it's been a wonderful hearing your story, and you're really inspiring. Do you have any advice around how to deal with fixed mindset people who have been in the industry for many years and may not think a young person should progress quickly or ahead of their time, or ahead of them, sorry?
I was there, of course, and well, anything that happened, I had to stand my ground with my knowledge. And then you will realize that not all of those people, they may have a very closed mindset, but not all of them are more intelligent than you. Rarely, some of them know more than you do. And if you show them how much you know and how much your opinion is backed up by your knowledge, not just because you want to show off something, they will have to listen. They may not listen the first time, but you have to keep going. They will listen the third time, but when they will listen, they will realize that what they were saying was wrong. And you have all the rights and the whole voice to be there, but you have to be persistent. It's not easy. It's not easy.
How do you think the direction of feminism and equality in the workplace is going? It'd be nice to hear your thoughts on the field's diversity. I would also like to say it's been great to see another woman in STEM. I wish I had had someone like you when I was younger. Thankfully, I've gone ahead and I am now an aerospace student. To me, the question was about what do you think the direction of feminism and equality in the workplace is going?
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much. And I'm happy that you're also into aerospace. Where the feminism is going, there is an edge to where the equality is going, because there is this old-fashioned thought of feminists being, against men, against any other gender, any other thing that is out there, because we are angry and we want to affirm ourselves for everything that has been done to us in the past 100 years. We are not going that way. It may have been like that in the past, but we are not going that way. We are going into a way where everybody now, irrespective of our gender, being a feminist means to be someone who wants equal value, who wants that everybody in a room, at the table, in whatever place, has an equal value. And we are going to a point where it's not because men or women or any genders in between or beyond are equal in a way. Like, we are not the same. Of course, we are not the same. Physically, we're not the same. Emotionally, we are not the same, but we are equal because our value is equal. It's just not because I'm a woman that my opinion doesn't have to be heard. It's just not because I'm a woman I have to be paid less if I work the same hours of a man. It's not just because I'm a woman that I have to get pregnant and get the maternity leave and the father doesn't get paternity leave. So we're moving towards having a broader way of talking equality, and in a way that we have to support and help each other educate towards equality. It's not a fight. And it's just a way of living together our differences and make them work for the best of everybody, because also men and any other gender will benefit from equality. If they can spend more time at home with their kids, they will be happier instead of working and bringing money home. Sure, they will be happy.
Yeah. Right, we've got 5 more questions, guys. So if you can leave all your questions for now, otherwise I assume this is, well, 6. I'll allow that last 6th one back in. No more questions after this, otherwise we could be here all night. This is from Mike Bradley. I've been into schools to try and get students interested in careers in STEM subjects. I still find girls find it's not the career for them. What do I, a 63-year-old man, say to them? Always a difficult one.
It's a difficult one because I remember some of the girls when I went to school, and they told me I wasn't interested into STEM because everybody will come here and they will look like my grandfather. And this is not an offense at all. It's the fact that if they only see one stereotype of person bringing out that message, again, they don't feel recognized. They are like, okay, this is all great. Why am I supposed to do this? Why? So if I want to become part of that group, of that community, is there anybody like me supporting me with, if I'm having a bad day? If one day I get my period and I don't have my pads, where do I go? Do I go to my grandfather? Where do I go? So they have to understand that the environment, irrespective of who is giving the message, the environment is going to be supportive of them. And this is something that we still have to work towards, because it's, as much as we have women that want to go into STEM, the environment isn't yet ready for the diversity and the inclusion of everybody.
Yeah, good answer. Yeah, this is quite a broad question, but I'll try best to answer. Do you need to be an academic person to be an engineer?
No.
Yeah. Simple answer.
Yeah, no. One of my best friends, he's a CEO of a very successful 3D printing company. It started in the south of Italy and now extended everywhere in the world. He never studied engineering. He started again like I did in the garage with his father. He worked on his first 3D printer when he was like probably 14. And he said, I hated studying, but I knew what I was doing. So I just got curious and I was self-taught robotics engineer. And he's multi-award CEO in the engineering field. So no, you don't need to be an academic to know about engineering.
Right, where would you say the center of the aerospace industry is, the US or Europe, and what is more influence? Are there any regions that are rapidly growing at the moment?
So I'd say that the States are obviously the ones that are more influential because they are the oldest and because there is more money. That's a fact. However, the UK is emerging, as I was saying. It's one of the most flourishing, it will be one of the most flourishing space hub in between the States and Europe. Europe is okay, but we still have, if you think about the startups, especially in tech, in the States and Silicon Valley, of course, they outnumber us. Houston is another port in the States, but the UK is a good place to be. It's a very good place to be. New emerging markets are, weirdly enough, Italy, which is very, very involved into space, Portugal, and the Emirates. The Emirates is going nuts about space. And of course, China, but China is a very difficult market to get in. So being closer to our home, the UK is the place to be at the moment. UAE is very, very inclusive. So if you want to have like, let's say an exchange, that's a very good place to be also.
Aerospace engineers make their own history. Is there any role in aerospace engineering for a historian?
Not really. There isn't any because it's such a broad industry that anything could become epic if you want to make it happen. Nowadays, we see at Elon Musk and what he's done. Again, he wasn't an engineer. Going back to the first question, he was never an engineer. He was a self-taught engineer and then a millionaire. Of course, he could do that. But there are many ways of doing history, and not also in a very public way. Any kind of small stories from how you've done an analog astronaut mission, a diary of an analog astronaut, or a diary of an astronaut, or a diary of a space architect, or anything that they have done to contribute to a way of democratizing space, access to space, to the communities, especially the developing ones, Africa, Southeast Asia. That's definitely going to be part of a major history book, hopefully in the future.
And the final question, thankfully.
Yes.
An inspiring and motivational talk. Will you come back and tell us some of your technical and engineering achievements in aerospace?
Oh, well, I would be pleased. I would be pleased. I couldn't really talk, but about so many things. But there are many things that I would love to share from a technical point of view, from the interplanetary missions to telecommunications to the new things that I'm doing. Now, basically, I'm working on advanced materials for space, nanomaterials, or my new startup is a completely different things, but it's still related to innovation and testing on orbits, again, to give more access to space to anybody, from PhDs to hobbies to whatever. So, well, I would love to have a technical talk.
So we'll book it in same time next year then?
Well, you know.
All right, so that's it for the 17 questions, guys. So really thanks a lot for turning up, and thank you for giving the questions. I'll hand over to Bianca again. If Bianca's got any more words to say for any other questions that may come through afterwards, that's entirely up to herself, but I'll pass it over to Bianca.
Well, thank you very much, Adam. Thank you, Bianca. That was very engaging, and it was really good to hear your presentation and your journey, which is really about motivating yourself and kind of having that drive to succeed, and also not underestimating your capabilities, which we tend to do sometimes, and being resourceful even in the crisis situations. I really enjoyed it, and thank you everyone for your questions as well, and I'm sorry that we weren't able to put forward all of the questions to Bianca due to the time constraints we have it. But yeah, so I'm gonna share the slide again because we've come to the end of the webinar, and I've got a couple of very useful information for you to say, so we'll just go over that. Adam, can you see my slide?
Yeah, sorry, I was just putting something in the chat. Yeah, I can see the slides.
It's all right. Right. I've got some useful information for you here. So someone asked in the chat about the continuing professional development certificate, and I would like to say that you will get 1 hour for this for attending this webinar, and you can contact Adam Wilson at adam.wilson@ietvolunteer.org, and we'll provide you with the certificate. And the recording of this webinar will be available to watch on our YouTube channels as well pretty soon. So if you follow the link here, which is also on the chat that Adam put earlier, you can watch these one and the ones that I mentioned earlier, which manufacturing and management group did recently, and also our Women in Engineering event, which was done a couple of months ago. You can find that there as well, and also the one about robotics. So yeah, and the questions to discuss. Right, and if you've got any other questions that you would like to ask about the community itself, about young professional communities and the Mercy and Western Cheshire local network, then you can go to the communities here. I've got the link here, and same as earlier, this link is in the chat box that Adam put earlier. And for any other query, you can email me at vivek.dorji@itvolunteer.org. And finally, I would like to say massive thank you to everyone for attending this. And I hope that you took a lot of things, a lot of good things from this webinars, which is beneficial to you. And I'd like to thank you, Bianca, for coming here and giving the webinar. Fantastic. We really enjoyed it, and we're really honored to have you. And thank you everyone for, thank you to the people from IET for making this possible and helping us organize this. And thanks Adam for co-hosting this. And someone mentioned about following Bianca and knowing more about her technical works. So for that, I've got social media accounts here. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook handle here. You can find her future lectures and more about her if you follow her in these social media platforms. And while you're there, you might as well go to ours and make our social media coordinator, Adam and Landry, happy. So these are links and handles for that as well. And finally, if I'm allowed, I hope it's not too early, I would like to say have a lovely Christmas. And thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.